Okay, Madam President, it's all yours.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. I just want to thank you guys for jumping on. And I know for this week, it has been crazy with so many early morning calls. And for some of us who are not early morning risers, I just want to thank you guys. We as an executive team realize the importance of training and to prepare you guys to go forward to the next step, and if not, just to ensure that you're successful in this position. So our regular monthly call is going to take a little different focus, and that will be on the job training. So this position, a lot of people run away from this position, but you don't know what you don't know. And can I tell you, I was treasurer of the state, and I was scared like hell. I won't say scared like the S word, but scared like hell what I was getting into. But now it was the best job I've ever had because, no, second to district vice president, because I learned so much. I learned so much from QuickBooks. I learned so much that I could use in my business. So our goal today with Denise and Renee is to walk with you through all your questions that you have, show you the best practice, and just to let you know that we are here to support you, to hold your hand, and to prepare you. Don't be nervous. If you're nervous, it's okay. But just know that you have people who are here to help you to be successful for the rest of the year and then to the next level. All right. So I thank you guys very much. I'll be here in the background working. But hey, you know to reach me if you have any questions, right? Not on treasurer, you have two people here, but anything, yes. Thank you, Denise. Thank you, Renee. Thank you, Beatrice here, Yvonne, all our district vice presidents, Natalie. Thank you guys very, very much. And for the presidents who have jumped on, really appreciate you guys being here as well. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam President. So we're going to start real quick. I'm going to do a very, very quick update because the treasurers haven't, usually every week when we do our treasurer call, we kind of cover what you covered on the president's elect call, and the first vice president call. So I'm just going to be a very quick update. We're not going to go into elections because that doesn't really pertain to you all right now. I will tell you your Sapphire banners. Thank you to everybody who contributed to the Sapphire. I do have several banners that I will be getting with you all next week, which would be Gainesville, North Lake, South Lake, Osceola, and Orlando. And then I know Lisa from Flagler County has quite a few from Daytona, Flagler, Jacksonville, and then Madam President has some for South Florida. So we will get those banners to you next week. In August, just to give you an update, we will actually have, again, training, and we're actually going to split up the treasurers into a different area and do on-the-job training for treasurers, because we're hoping that that will give everybody an opportunity, if they haven't figured out the job by then, kind of a refresher course. And then, of course, for all your incoming treasurers, keeping in mind that we will be doing elections early this year. So if somebody is going to be treasurer for next year, to get them started early, come June, have them start coming on our calls, because you are still the treasurer until the end of the year. Keep that in mind. And your job is to train that incoming treasurer with the help of myself, Renee, and the rest of the executive line. So please, 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 we want to get them started early. And that's pretty much all I'm going to cover with what we went over on the president's calls, because the rest we can cover next month and your presidents can go over with you all. So Renee and I have been working together to figure out where do we see the biggest breakdowns in the networks. And thank you all for your responses. Like I said, we received 22 of 27 networks that responded to the Google form. And one of the biggest things that we saw from a lot of the networks, there were few common denominators. How do you put your budget into QuickBooks? How do you conduct your audit and keep your audit book? Taxes being filed, and your financial policy. So we're going to start first off talking about budgets. Your budget, thank you that 100% of your respondents said that your budget had been approved, which is wonderful. So thank you, thank you, thank you. However, about 25 to 30%, your budget has not been entered into QuickBooks. So we would like to take a few minutes right now. Renee is going to share her screen and show you how to enter your budget into QuickBooks. If you already have your budget in there, great, but many of you do not. And I know many presidents-elect, first vice presidents that are on the call do not know how to enter a budget into QuickBooks. So Renee is going to pull her budget up here and share her screen and show you how to enter it into QuickBooks.
Can you see the main screen, my main screen?
I can see your Google screen, Renee, and now you're signing in. You got it.
Okay, well, we don't want to sign in with them. We have to sign in somebody else.
Okay.
So, and I'm using, I don't know if Osceola is on here or not. I've been working with them. Oops, hold on. So they don't have anything in there. So I'm going to show you as if it's from scratch. Now, when you're doing your budget, one of the things that we keep saying, so one of the things that you need to make sure of on the budget is when you're looking at the different tabs that go to the main budget page, that they're flowing correct. I think a few of us had issues when we were putting the budget into QuickBooks that it wasn't balancing. And the reason it wasn't balancing is because of some of those fields on your actual budget where it was incorrect. So once you have a budget and it's balanced, which means your income and your expenses are matching, then we want to put it into QuickBooks. And I'm going to use, like I said, Osceola, just because I know there's nothing there yet because I haven't done it for them.
And keep in mind, one of the things that Renee and I were talking about, we want you to ask us for help. If you need help, don't be afraid. She's here to help. She's been working with several networks, helping them out. That doesn't mean you're not doing your job. It's just maybe because things weren't done and put correctly in the past, or you're not sure what to do. There's nothing wrong with that. Please don't be afraid to ask us for help. Believe me, you can ask Natalie. How many times I've asked her, and I said this on the calls this week. Last time I used QuickBooks prior to this, it was on a 5¼ floppy drive in the 90s. So that gives you, many of you weren't even born then. So don't even speak up, please, because you can't be.
See, and this is bad because this is a different view, which most of us don't have.
Yeah.
And that's the problem too. I know there's a few of us out there that has like where they have pledges instead of like accounts receivable, but the pledges are your accounts receivable. And we might cheat and go someplace else real quick.
Okay. But anyway, like I said, don't be afraid to ask questions if you have questions. That's what we're here for. And between myself, Renee, Natalie, President Charmaine, we can get the answers. And then we have several treasurers that are accountants that can also help with that. So.
Yeah, let's not use them. Okay, hold on. We're going to go find somebody else real quick.
Okay.
See, tells you.
Minor technical difficulty.
Yeah. And I can't see the whole thing. And y'all are sitting there going, oh my God, she doesn't know what the hell she's doing. Well, yeah. Oops. Okay, we'll go back up. So the first thing that you want to do when you're putting your budget, you have to make sure you have a chart of accounts and that your chart of accounts match your items on your budget line by line. So for here, if you look, they really haven't set up too much of theirs. So I'm going to show you how to set up the account if you're having to do it from the beginning, you know, that you're doing it from the beginning. So how I got to mine, and it's different ways. Typically, you would see the chart of accounts on the left-hand side of the screen that you could just hit chart of accounts and then you could add it from there. I had to go through the gear icon and then go to chart of accounts when I got to there. It's just because they're formats differently. So one of the things that we all have on income, so we're going to do new. And we're going to show the type of account as income. and it can be revenue, other revenue. It doesn't really matter that much. And then what you want to call it is we're nonprofit revenue. And then you're going to name the account. So in this case, they need memberships dues, which is from National. Dues, which you would put in here. Okay, and then you would just save and close. So that added their account onto their chart of accounts. So now if you go down here, you see membership dues as revenue. So any questions on that so far? How do you set it, how you do the accounts? And Denise, if you could let me know.
Yep,
And
I will.
And
I
if they
have a
want,
question.
Oh, somebody
Yes.
has a question.
Yeah, so when you did that, you made a comment that it could go either way. With that, it could go either way, but when you run a report, will that affect the report?
no, because it's going to set it up how you set it up, and you're going to set up your chart of account, your chart of accounts to look like your budget. For example, let me see. They don't have one. So most of us, when you're looking at your budget, we'll do this. Is Osceola on here by any chance? No. Okay, so we're going to do it again, and I'll show you this way. So we also know that we have strategic partners, which I can never say that word right. So we're going to say partners. So we're going to do revenue again, because that's the type of account that it's going into. We can still say it's not for profit. But what I'm going to do here is, and I'm just going to do partnership now, because I'm not going to be able to spell everything, partnership. So let's do this. Yes, I told you I can spell. Okay, to do that, now what I'm doing here is setting up the main account for partnerships. And I have to move you guys because my button's closed. So we're going to save and close here. And then what we want to do is set up a sub account, right, for the partnerships, because you have different levels of partnerships. So if we go back to new again, and we go back to, hold on. We don't want cash on hand up top. We go back to the income or revenue, and we do non here. And then discount, say you have a diamond level, which is your highest sponsor, and it's for $2,000. You can put this in the area. And then what you're going to do, where it says sub account, you're going to click that button and put drop down, and then you're going to find the strategic partner that we just made right here. So when we save it and close, now when you go to your chart of accounts, your account is set up with your strategic partner and then your diamond underneath it. So for each partnership that you have or level, you would set up the account that way. Any questions on that so far?
And keep in mind, once you have it in there to run the next year and continual, your account should stay the same.
Correct.
It's
correct.
like 7,600.8 or 70. Everything should stay the same unless you've added something.
And a lot of our networks local networks don't use the account numbers. We just put it in. But if you put in the account numbers, it's still going to be the same way. Some of the networks, say you have events January through December, we'll code it like January through December, and then the side put what type of event it is, just to give you a breakdown or an itemization. So once you have, this is the first part you have to do. You have to look at your budget and put every line item that you see on your budget in your chart of accounts. So once that's done, then what you need to go to is product and services, which I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it on here. Oops. Because we need to set up a product and service for each account.
Just go to the settings.
Yeah. Yep, I got it. This one's weird, set up weird. And it keeps asking me how I like them. I don't like them. Okay, so products and services you need to set up for each account that you set up as an income, you need to set up a product and service for. So what we did, the first one, which we go here, and you can do service. I call it service, and it doesn't really fit us that well, but it will work. So we're going to put national dues again, or we put membership dues, right? Membership dues. And then what you're going to do is the income account is going to match the income account we set up for membership dues. Okay, so it's a two-part step with this. You need to set up the account first on your account, on your chart of accounts, and then set up a product and service for each of those income accounts that you set up. And where I'm finding a lot of people are getting confused is when you go to send out an invoice, and if you're not matching the product and service up right, it's not going to go into the right account when you get that money in. So then after you have done all your chart of accounts, put all of your products and services in. If you go to the gear icon and go to budgeting, and they haven't done their budget on here, so it's going to be the first one. And what you're going to do, a couple of things. It's going to be for January 23 or 2023. Your intervals you want to do yearly. We don't want to do monthly because we want a yearly total. So when you come down, I have to move our pictures again because they're in the way. So far we only have membership dues and then probably just our partnership down here. So when you're putting in numbers, we expected, say, and this is just guessing, we want to do next. We have to name it. You're going to name it 2023 budget. And we're going to do next. And then you can able to put on the numbers. Be careful with this little thing because it floats. It like moves around on you. So you need to be careful when you're putting your numbers in. So on membership dues, say that they're going to get 2,400 here. And then you want to hit, just hit down so that number stays, because sometimes that will move around on you. So this is like that. So if you X out of it, it will take you to, and then you can move between the things. So you would have to put in all like your partners. How much am I expecting on this? We're going to say $10,000 for laughs and giggles. And that's what I mean. You just have to be careful with that little X thing because we don't like it. And then it will put the total on there. Make sense so far? Any questions? Concerns? I can't see anybody, so.
If you have a question, just unmute yourself because she can't see anybody about this. So does anybody have any questions about how to put your budget? I know Camille asked that you did the spreadsheet that Beata sent out, that form. That was to get your budget and get all your figures and to bring that before your board to get approved. And then once it's approved, then it has to be put into QuickBooks in order to run your reports that you have to present to your board every month. So does anybody have any questions? Please, please, please just unmute yourself and ask.
So I did this, but then when I went to go run my reports for January, February, all my percents are like these super weird, like 10 million %, and I'm not sure why.
Can I go look at yours?
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what I did, because I did this. As a matter of fact, I even have like a flow chart where I wrote down exactly.
Yeah, and I'm going to put here that I don't want to save it because those were not real numbers.
Okay.
I have a feeling that's in her report customizations.
Yeah, I'm going to go to her next.
Yeah.
We'll pull yours up if that's okay, Jennifer.
Yeah.
And again, keep in mind that we don't want anybody to feel like we're calling them out, or this is for everybody to learn, because she's going to pull up the state one here shortly and show you how to how we actually reconcile. And I had done when I had
Jennifer, can you text me that to my, oh, never mind. Hold on.
Did it come in?
Oh, hold on, I have it.
and when I had put in our budget for, again, not
And we
really
can
knowing
show
how to-
them that too, Denise, because that
Yeah,
is one of the things that
Okay.
we needed, to talk about. Okay, hold on.
So I had a question. I was under the impression that we can just upload it, so we have to go in there individually, like she was showing every single number, every column for our budget, right?
You should, and the only reason why is because if you can
If it
upload
doesn't
it
transfer, right?
and it doesn't, right, if it doesn't transfer, you're not going to know where. And a lot of us aren't familiar enough with QuickBooks to figure out where it might be. So I think it'd be easier just to input those numbers. And it really, once you put your chart of accounts in and it matches your budget, it's really easy. The first two steps is, putting your chart of accounts in and then doing your products and services. So you're saying, Jennifer, where does not work?
So when I run my reports, so when I ran my January report and my February report, it was like all wonky, like they weren't right.
See, and both of yours are weird. Sorry. Okay, where do you get your reports from here?
I go into reports.
Yep, it's not there.
Why is it not there now?
I'm just getting a different view.
Oh,
Yeah, I think you have to change your menu settings to include it.
Okay, so people smarter than me, where I'm gonna find it.
You see menu
can you
settings,
hit the gear? Can you hit the gear and then get to it? Is reports under there?
different gear, go to the bottom left under bookmarks.
Bottom left.
Actually, it's bottom right, switch to accountant view.
No,
Here,
switch to accountant view, right where the screen you're on, it says switch to accountant view.
okay.
Under
tell me where.
profile, very bottom.
Oh, okay, whoops, there it went away.
Ah,
No,
there we
everybody should do
go.
that. Everybody
There
did
we go. That looks
so
like
we know
ours
fine.
now. Thank
Right, it's like, why doesn't theirs look like mine?
It takes a village.
I know, it's like, oh my God, okay, so you're
Because my
saying.
QuickBooks is possessed.
Right, because I know it didn't look like that last time, Jennifer, when we did
No,
this.
it didn't. I'm like, it's possessed.
Okay, so when you first go in to get the report, your budget versus actual, it's gonna look wonky, right?
Yep.
Okay, and what you do, so write this down, you're gonna do customization. You're gonna go down to show grid, and you're gonna show accounts versus total, because when the budget versus actual is ran, it's taking from January 1 to the current date we're in.
Okay, so hold on. So customize, show grid.
Yeah, customize,
Yep.
and then you're gonna show grid, do accounts versus total. You're gonna drop down and then do run report.
Renee,
Ma'am,
have her uncheck percent of budget.
percent of budget there.
Yeah, that might be.
That we usually get the percentages and I just ignore the percentages. The percentages is telling what you're over and out, over and under. Okay, so we're gonna pick on her, and it's learning, Jennifer, I love you very much.
No, I know, I'm fine.
So one of the things, and it was the same thing that Denise did when she did her master, she did her master budget for state. We don't want numbers in this main account. See where it says events?
Uh-huh.
All needs to be broken out into your events that you've had. So under events, for example, if you have an event in January, February, March, April, May, June, whatever, all of those should be listed under your events, and there should be no totals. There should be nothing in the group events.
Okay, I'm just looking at my, so my president-elect didn't break it out. It's listed in my projected budget from her. Line 7 just says events, and then 9, and then 16,280.
Okay, and the reason for this, so let's talk about this and everybody can give, chime in. If we list it under here, say you have an event for January and you're supposed to have a budget event for budget for each event you have going on. So January comes and say you spent $2,000 on it, but you don't know, you have to have your monthly budget, and that's going to get all commingled. So you're not going to know when you're over budget on each event unless you break out the events. I'm not saying that you need to do micromanage it. Like here you have, for February, you had a February meeting. You can just put a total here that we're expecting $2,000 for February
So
without
just
breaking.
divide by 9 then, I'm assuming then?
In your case, because most of them are the same, you can do that. Right.
Okay.
And show that you don't have to be so detailed as to go into that, I got 150 ticket sales, I got 150 non-member sales, I got 200 in this. You don't have to break it down that finite, because then you're going to run into a problem managing your budget, if that makes sense. So
Yes.
if you
Yeah, one thing I'm worried about, like I know every month at Monarch, the bill is over $2,000. So if I were to break this 16,280 into 9, it's $1,808.
Okay, which brings up a good case, right? So
Yeah.
if you're breaking these out and you had January, your Monarch was $2,000 and you budgeted 19 or 16 or whatever that number comes to be, you need to have a board meeting saying why you're paying it and you're out of balance or out of budget. Then
That
you
means
need to
every month.
every month, anytime you're out of budget. So let's go. And it's not necessarily on income here, it's on the expenses when you get down below. So looking at hers, there again, you've got your purse fundraiser and then you have purse sales. Okay, so you don't need, if you're not breaking it down here, you're not going to break it down on this column. Does that make sense? What you're saying here is you're going to make 19,000 on the purse auction and you're not caring where all the money's coming from.
Okay, so then don't break it down. Okay, because I just followed the budget like exactly the way it was given to me is what I did. Okay, so I'm just looking at the budget.
And if you want it broken down, you can, but you need to break it down on the budget side, which is what Denise did at state level. She put in just a lump sum number for strategic partners, but they break theirs down to each partner. So we had to go back through and break it down to match what was in this top number, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, I'm not even sure why that's there. Because I have, so I'm seeing my line 10 cents per, says purse auction, it has the 19,450, just like it's there. And that's my income.
Yeah, and see, so when we're looking at this, we're looking to see that you have something in both columns. For example, here you put 500 for builder's lunch. It should just go in the top one and not broken down into a sponsor. Or again, break it out all the way, but don't, do one or the other. You can't like, do you understand what I'm saying? Maybe. Seeing like ticket sales, you have it up here, but it's not matching into your line item, like your strategic partners are.
Okay. I guess I'm just a little confused about that.
We will talk again.
Okay, okay.
Renee,
And
go
there
back,
again. Oh, yes, ma'am.
go back up to the strategic partners and explain, because so Jennifer, what she's saying, for example, strategic partners, you have a budget for your bronze and you have an actual, they match line for line.
Like here.
Yeah.
So that's
Okay.
kind of, go ahead.
Right, and that's what I want. Instead of having this 16,850 as one line under that would be here on strategic partners revenue, we want it broken down like you have that. So when you're looking at your events or your fundraisers, the same way. If you're choosing to break it down even more and you want to know where the sales are coming from, then your budget needs to be broken down the same way as the actual.
Okay, so the reason that is broken down like that is because that's how it was broken down on the paper budget that I was given.
Right, and same way with expense, budget expense. It needs to be broken down to show, because you're wanting to see each month if you're making money on your events, breaking even, or you're coming in the hole. If you're in the hole, then that's something that you guys need to be mindful of, because it's not working with your budget then.
Okay. Okay, yeah. So I guess I'll have to
Renee, I believe Bonnie has a question. She has her hand raised.
Yes,
Yeah, and I
ma'am.
just wanted, I was gonna say, when you say who you are, just say what network you're from, because President Charmaine wants to be aware of what networks, because she may not know exactly and see who's on, and Renee, of course, can't see anybody right now. So
Okay.
Bonnie,
I can see me, Denise, and Natalie. Okay, so Bonnie,
It's Bonnie with the Greater Palm Beach Network. What we did was we generalized the month only if it's not a staple event, because we're limited per our subscription on how many accounts we can have.
correct.
So if it's a staple event, we have our gala, casino night, strategic partner lunch. But if it's one that we're trying new, then it went under like January event expense.
Right. And as long as it's, you know, I don't know how to quite say this. So as long as you're breaking it out to match your budget, if your budget
Yes.
is broken down, then you need to have in your QuickBooks it broken down.
Okay.
So some of the networks get really into like minute details. That's going to make it harder on you. So let's say, for example, and I have to come
travel,
back.
talk about travel.
Yeah, I'll talk about travel. And do you see this negative right here? That would be, we would need to know why that's negative. We shouldn't have a negative here. And if you want to find out what it is, I don't know if you saw that, if you click on the number there where I was at, it takes you to that particular description. So if I go back to report, see, I clicked on the $220 because I want to know why it was negative, and you
Okay.
open it up and it brings in what the expense was for that.
So that means I didn't have a line item for that, and that's why that's negative, because that's what we paid for. We had a strategic partner. You know what, that might have been under the, because we combined it with a event that was new members, like a new member orientation. So maybe it was supposed to have gone under that.
Yeah, so that would be a question. And so, and like I said, this does not pick on Jennifer Day.
No, I'm fine with it, because I admit, I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
So here again,
Somebody have
on the line item before, and especially on this, because it was an event that you're paying for, this was Sunbiz. Should have had a board meeting saying, okay, we budgeted $75. Sunbiz is going to be $96.25. We have to pay it, but you need a motion in your minutes saying that it was okay for you to pay that.
Okay.
And that's for all our networks that we need to do this. If you're over budget, you don't change the budget. You don't go, oh, well, we can put the money here, or we can take it from there. You need to say an emotion why you're paying it. And if you're running short on money, where that money is going to come from to make up.
Okay.
And then you'll know for next year, if the renewal is $96,
Right.
and next year you'll want to up the budget to $100. You know,
Correct.
if you know this year you're only paying $150 for Zoom and you have it budgeted for $500, then you probably don't need to budget it for $500. So it kind of goes both ways. So.
And when you're doing this, you're able to, when you're looking at your budget and setting up the accounts, you're going to have like main categories like membership expense. And then you could put everything under that as a subcategories that goes back to that and it feeds back into it, if that makes any sense. So now we're going to talk about travel. What some networks are doing is they have, oh, you've got it broken down to spaces, not persons. So a lot of us.
That's how my budget is broken down from the president.
Okay. So how do you know who gets how much money when they're going to Orlando?
I don't know.
Okay.
That's
So
a good question.
Well, we're going to talk about that in a minute too.
Don't we just take the credit card, Renee, and just have a good time? Joking.
yes.
Joking.
So, okay, no credit. Oh, you're gonna make my eye twitch, Jennifer.
I know, I'm sorry.
That's right. It's going now. It's like, oh my God, it's twitching really bad. Okay, so looking at this, there's a couple of things. I would think that it would be better to be by person, president-elect, because your president-elect is going to spend more money than your president, and then your line officers are going to spend less. So doing it this way, we don't know who gets how much money to go where.
Okay,
So
so what's the suggestion? So do I need to have Sylvia go back and do that then?
break it down. I would break it down by line officer.
Okay, so
Then-
break down travel by officer, not event, right?
Correct.
And let me
Okay.
just jump in here. So what we're gonna cover after Renee goes through the budget, and hopefully y'all are getting some information. And again, you can always reach out to myself, Renee, Natalie, any of us afterwards. Part of your financial policy, which we'll cover next, will tell you who you're going to give travel to, what your daily per diem is gonna be, et cetera. Keeping in mind that your president-elect travel is always gonna be the most because they have to go to Network 360. So one of the things that Renee was seeing in one of the budgets is they were going kind of like what you did earlier, Jennifer. They were breaking it down. Let's say they were going to, well, Renee, go ahead, and since you saw their.
So what they were having the treasurer do, and it was by the board's choice, is say on the president, they broke out how much the mileage was for Orlando, how much the lodging was for Orlando, how much the meals were, how much, they broke it down per line officer, per item. So if you're wanting to do that here, and let's see if we can follow along. So on this case, say this is for your president-elect, that she's got $62,000 or $6,200 to spend for president-elect. That's what it's going to say. I don't care as a treasurer how much she spends in Orlando or how much she spends in DC, as long as it's in with our financial policy and budget. If she doesn't go over the 6,200, you don't need board approval to pay each line officer in travel, as long as they're completing their travel form and it's in within your financial policy and procedures. So
Okay,
if you break it down that she had $6,200 to spend, we don't care if she spent more here in Orlando or more in Washington, DC, as long as she's not going over her budget of $6,200 by the end of the year. Now, if you break it out like this network was doing, which they didn't have it budgeted that way, they were just breaking it down. You need to have, again, if you have a line on here saying that president-elect or mileage for Orlando was $52, you need an item on the budget to show that if you're breaking it down that fine item. That's going to give you real treasurers a harder time, because you're going to have each account every time you go over, you're going to have board approval. Where if you have a flat fee, we don't care until the end, as long as you're within your financial policy and procedure guidelines. Oh, what happened to me? I went away.
And that also brings up something that Bonnie had said, that, you're limited to how many line items you have. So if you're breaking down every single line item, and when she pulls up the state one, you'll see, I have a budget, Natalie has a budget, President Charmaine has a budget. As long as we stay, each DVP has a budget, as long as they stay within their budget and what the guidelines are for the financial policy, they can claim mileage or not claim mileage. That's up to them, because they have to stay within that budget. So you don't need to break it down and be so minute, because it's just extra work.
It usually tells us how many they've used. I was trying to see how much she has.
While she's looking for this, does anybody else, Bonnie, do you have another question? Or that's still your hand from before?
Oh, sorry, that was her before.
Does anybody
have any questions? Sorry, Denise.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go. Your turn. Anybody have questions on this part of it?
I have a question in regards to what if you're bundling, not bundling, if you give a budget to each line officer and the line officer doesn't use the budget, let's use if the first vice president can't go, can the treasurer go? Like, can they use that money, or is it just for the president, first vice president? In other words, can there be a substitute?
I believe there can, as long as you have the money in there and as long as you have board approval.
Okay, thank you.
If you'd like me to clarify on that, Beth, you're from Manatee, correct?
Excuse me, Beth Becker, Manatee County, yes.
Okay, so you can reallocate the budget, but you have to do so through a governing board meeting with minutes that reflect the decision made with the governing board approval. So a motion would need to be made and passed, but you would not alter your budget in QuickBooks at that time. You would just have it reflected in your minutes.
Okay, and what Natalie means by that, let's go to there, because when we say to reallocate, we don't mean you move things, like Natalie just said. So for example, we'll go back onto here, customize.
While she's getting there, I'll explain why we don't reallocate. You want your budget to, at the end of the year, you want next year's, the incoming president and the treasurer, when they're working on their budget, they need to see what the numbers were that you were originally working with. And if you were to allow your treasurer to take part of your first vice president's travel budget, that would not be an accurate representation for them to use in the future. So that's why we don't change it in QuickBooks.
Right, so here, for example, say this was our president-elect that we were saying, say she had extra money and you wanted to send somebody else. You wouldn't say, you wouldn't move this money to another person. You would just say or reflect, we had 6,200, president-elect didn't go, so we sent treasurer, blah, 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 blah. And that's where you would note it at. And I don't know, I mean, Denise and Natalie, would you be okay with them coding it to the president-elect, knowing that it was a substitute for that? Or would you guys want to see it under her actual travel person?
I don't think. Go ahead, Natalie. What were you gonna say?
Tough question. Honestly, I would leave it under the actual officer's travel expenses. You can always add a note within QuickBooks. As to the rationale, you can upload the minutes if you need to, because you can put documentation in QuickBooks, but I would make sure that it's notated in the audit book.
Yes, that was gonna be my.
What went on and why.
And even on the travel request form, I would put on there, I know we have some people that will pay for other people. So you just need to, mark, like if you're paying, if I paid for Denise to go to wherever, I needed to get reimbursed, you would put it that I was reimbursing, that I was getting paid, but you would reflect it under Denise's travel because it was technically for her, even though I paid for it. Okay, any other questions regarding that or anything? One other report I want to show you real quick. I'm sorry to jump in.
Somebody have a question?
The balance sheet. Okay. There should be ever negative numbers. If there's a negative number, we need to figure out why that there's a negative number. And there, oh heck, my computer's funky. And then if there is something in uncategorized assets or undeposited funds, we need to see what that's going on about. And how is she running her report? See, and Denise, she's running it the same way, right? Do you see that?
Yeah.
So I don't want to get into that right now. I don't think I do.
That'll be another training.
That'll be another training. I think we need to talk more about that, but let's do something real quick. Okay, we'll talk about that later. So anything about the budget and getting it in, does anybody have any questions? Questions? I can't see people. Let me make you big. No questions? Nope. Nope.
And I know it's a lot of information and it's probably still muddied to a lot of people and I know it's overwhelming. Like I said, reach out to myself, reach out to Renee. We're here to help you all. We want to make sure that if you are going to be treasurer next year, that you have a really good understanding. If you're not, that you can help get the new treasurer trained for next year. Because this, without a doubt, and we've talked about it before, probably besides president, is the hardest position on the line. Because there's so much information. If you've never done it before, it's overwhelming. But we're here to help you. So, Natalie has been a tremendous help to me. Renee's been a tremendous help to me. President Charmaine's been a tremendous help. Like I said, I haven't used QuickBook in 30 years. So, it was all new to me, and Renee just told you, I mean, I messed up and she fixed it, fixed it for me. But it happens. So, any questions about that? So before we go on to, let's go ahead, since you're in there, Renee, let's just show real quick how to reconcile, which should be done monthly. So a few things that I'm going to talk about, and then Renee's going to show you. So regarding another thing that came up in the conversation, or the forms that y'all filled out, was the audit book. Number one, you do need to have a hard copy of your audit book. Okay? I can't stress this enough. This is my audit book from January through March. Yours will not look like this. You need to have a hard copy, because we have some networks right now that treasurers have left or just kind of disappeared over the past, and there's no paperwork, there's nothing that we can see, and nobody has any accountability. So one of the things that you have to do with your audit book, and we do this at the state level, and it might be a recommendation at the local level. Myself, Renee, and President Charmaine every month have a meeting. You could do it with your president, and we go through our reconciliation, and we go line by line, and we make sure that the checking account matches the receipts. So in the audit book, you have tabs, and you will have a tab for your bank statement. You will have a tab for your deposits. You will have a tab for your debit card, if you're using that for something, which we can talk about that in a minute. You should have a tab for your check requests. Anything that you do on a monthly basis, if you are doing electronic bill pay, which we'll talk about that in a minute as well, you'll have a tab for that. So when we go through the bank statement, every single, and this is what the audit committee should be doing. They should be taking your bank statement, and each month somebody takes a different month, and they should be matching item for item for item. Your reimbursements, okay? So your reimbursements would go under, in your case, probably under your check request tab. Everything that gets reimbursed needs to have a receipt. I told this story the other day when President Chris had come to our installation in January. We reimbursed her for her travel. Well, I had gotten a receipt or a check request from National. I had to email them back and say, can you please send me receipts to match this check request? Because I need to have those receipts, because guess what? I'm going to be held accountable for that. And they said, no problem. And they sent me the receipt for the flight. So it's going to be the same type of thing, that anything that you get a request for needs to have a receipt. If you're reimbursing for mileage, they need to have the printout of the map to and from. If you're reimbursing for a meal, not just a credit card receipt, it needs to be detailed, because we want to make sure we do not reimburse for alcohol, and we're only reimbursing for that individual, not if they went to dinner with their friends or family. So I can't stress enough how detailed it needs to be. Again, there's some networks that they can't find any receipts and they've been reimbursing. That's not acceptable. You have to have receipts to get reimbursed. We have to have receipts. If Natalie sends me something and she doesn't have a receipt, guess what? What am I going to say, Natalie? Too bad, so sad. You have to have receipts. And if they can't find a receipt, then sorry. Suggestion that is, have them take a copy of the picture of the receipt right away as soon as they get it from the restaurant. That way, if they lose it, they can send you the PDF of it. So does anybody have any questions about that? Or is anybody having any issues? And you don't have to say your network name, because we don't want to call anybody out. You can remain anonymous, that you're getting a hard time with that, doing reimbursements.
So a tidbit that I've learned over the years, if you have iPhone, I don't know if it works for Android, but in your notes, you can actually create a note for the specific trip and you can scan your receipts into there. It actually scans them, which is a much higher quality. And at the end of my trip, I just go to that specific note and print the whole thing out, attach it to my travel reimbursement, send it on to Denise. So you can always get past that word of advice on to anybody who's traveling.
But I can't stress enough, because you have to have an audit book, because when we had done the survey we just did, I think about 20% of you did not have a hard copy audit book. And you say, well, I don't want to waste paper. I want to put it on the computer. God forbid something happens to you or your computer, then where are we going to be left? So we keep these books for 7 years. So when we go in August and we put Natalie's books in from last year and my books in from this year, we'll remove the books from 7 years ago, shred all the paperwork, and reuse the notebooks. So I just can't stress that enough. So if you're treasurer, if you're president, or anybody on the line is giving you a hard time, reach out to myself and I will make sure that we have a conversation. If you're the president, make sure that you do understand that this is how it has to be done. If you're an incoming president, we just can't stress this enough, that just because there's money there doesn't mean it's just willy-nilly. It's the members' money and it has to be spent according to the budget. And you have to make sure you have all your documentation. And that's why the audit committee is made up of usually a past president, a strategic partner, a member, a couple members. You can have 4 or 5 people on the committee. You don't need to have a bunch of people, but not anybody that's currently on the board. So if you look at our audit committee, it's people, strategic partner, past presidents, past DVPs. It's nobody that's on the board. Natalie's not auditing my books. President Charmaine's not auditing my books. It's people that are not involved with the money, and they will nitpick. And if you sat in our budget and finance committee last year meeting, which I hope you do this year, you will see how much they will. And that's what they're going to do, because that's their job, to talk about the audit and go through it. So anybody, please, any questions? Anybody at all about the audit? I mean, about your book and keeping your book together, and concerns? Anyone? No?
One additional rationale for the hard copy audit book. If you were to ever get audited by the IRS, anybody here ever been audited by the IRS? Yes, they don't audit you from a year ago. They all of a sudden send a letter and it's 5 years ago. And you have to be able to create all that documentation that they want. If you have got it stashed away on a computer somewhere and that treasurer is 5 years removed, very difficult to have to reconstruct. If you have a hard copy book that's stored away in a secure location, that's mandatory, by the way. You grab the book and you run with it. It's so much easier.
Yeah. Again, if you have any questions on how to get your book together, or please reach out. I mean, I think I've talked to many of you, treasurers, president-elects, presidents. I'm easy to reach, and I'll get an answer. If I don't know the answer, I'll find it for you. But please, 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 we're here to help. So Renee, take over.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so we're doing the reconciliation. Well, we're not going to do, oops, hold on.
She's going to show you really quickly how you would reconcile something in QuickBooks. Again, I recommend every month, sit down with your president and do this. And then when you have your every month that you're presenting your budget versus actual and your reports, and we'll go over that shortly, to the governing board, you're comfortable that everything's done, and any issues, then you can talk about them openly with everyone.
Okay, so first, when you're putting in deposits or checks, some people will wait until the end of the month. Some people will do it through the month, and it makes a difference as to how you're going to reconcile. So let's say that we haven't, at the state level, we don't do that. We do it at the end of the month. We don't do here and there. So what we're going to do is go to banking. Maybe we're going to go to banking. And then if you see on here, we have to ignore how much money they have because they got way more lots of money than the rest of us does. Okay, so it's going to give you all of their account, all the accounts down here. It shows it with the money. What you can do, if you see this little button here, if you hit it, it's going to update the accounts. And it's what it does from here, it takes all the information from your bank and it dumps it into QuickBooks. One thing bad about that is if you write a check and it hasn't cleared in the month that you wrote the check, you're not going to have that unless you manually put that in. So we're on, let's do this one. We're on this account. So if you see down here, there was an interest charge and it's coded to interest income. You can add the button, you can add it. And when it adds it, it will take it to that account. You have to be careful because sometimes it takes it to accounts that you don't necessarily want it to go to. So if you're not sure, if you drop down on category, then you can see all of their different accounts that they have into. So we want this to go to interest income, which is correct. So you hit the add button. And when we go to do the account, we did it in 46, this one. So when you go to your gear icon, you go to reconciliation. And if I go too fast, we'll do another one. Okay, we want to do account 8610.
Oh, you just passed it.
Did I?
Yep, keep going up, go up. There you go, right?
Oh, I see it. Okay, 8610. You want to put your ending balance in, which is 4600.68. Ending date would have been March 31st. Start reconciliation. Here. Okay, what you're looking for is the difference to be 0. If this number right here is 0, you have won first prize and it's all done. And it's as simple as easy as that. So what you want to do is you hit finish. And it says view reconciliation report. I print out this report for every account that I reconcile for state. And I send it to them as part of with their bank statements. It shows, you know, what cleared. In this case, all we had was the interest income on this account, which we put in. So we will print and I'll save it to a PDF for right now. Maybe we're going to save it. And I will send it later. So that account has been reconciled. Now, if you, oh heck. Jesus, Lord in heaven, Renee. You know, some days.
I'm proud of you for saying heck.
I know, aren't you proud? Those that know me should be like, Lydia, you should be proud of me. She's not paying attention to us probably. I was looking at her. I said, hello, Lydia. And she's like, she's not talking to me. Where's she at? Okay, here we go. Sign in again.
I don't know how to unmute myself.
There you go.
Oh,
You're unmuted now.
Here.
you're there. I saw you. It's like, hello there.
Well, while
Okay.
Renee's pulling that up, does anybody have any questions about that at all? And are you doing this monthly, reconciling your accounts? Anybody that's not doing it that has a question about it? Anybody?
Everybody's going to be doing it monthly from now on? When
And that-
we go out, yay!
So, and that's it too. I mean, and I know Denise has said this and we'll say it again. If you, seriously, if you guys, oh heck, if you guys need help, I don't mind helping. Sometimes it's just easier for me to put your budget in versus you that's, you know, you're here for, you know, 6 more months. And for me to do it, you know, it might take 15, 20 minutes versus someone who's trying to learn it and it's one and off and you're not going to do it again. I don't mind doing it. Just, you know, give me a little time. I've got 2 networks that I have big projects on, but if you guys just want us to look to see if you are, you know, everything looks right for you guys, we don't mind doing that. Because you don't know what you don't know, right? And we're not saying that you should be bookkeepers or anything like that to know what's right or wrong. Yes, no, maybe so.
Absolutely. So, someone had, just mentioned in the chat that they don't print the reconciliation and, Natalie just responded, we recommend printing and putting it in the audit book. So, because again, every month when you have your board meeting, you should be sending to the board prior to the meeting, your budget versus actual and your balance sheet. So it should be reconciled every month and you should be able to review it with the board. And actually twice a year, you should be reviewing it with the entire membership, just like we do. We're not hiding any money that we have. We're not hiding because this is the members' money. So when we have our budget and finance meeting, if y'all didn't have a chance to come in January, it was a huge meeting. How many people were in there? Probably 75. It was big. And it was a great meeting and you got to see just what goes on. And again, we're an open book to everybody with what we have in the money in our account. And if you go to national, you can sit in their budget and finance meeting as well and get to hear what they have. So it's not something that's a secret. So please make sure you are doing it on a monthly basis because it is.
Yeah, if you haven't printed it, if you go under your reports, you can print it from there. It's like I said, I'm trying to look at 3 screens on my little laptop thing. So you can print it. And the other thing, so if you haven't, you're doing your audit, and you're putting your checks in as you go, and a check in, say, March doesn't clear until April. When you look at the audit report or the reconciliation report, it's going to tell you it's still outstanding. So when you have your audit done, your audit people can go to the reconciliation report and say, okay, well, I don't see this check clearing in March when you wrote it. And then they can see that it was still outstanding in March, and then it clears in April. So that report's going to tell them any outstanding checks or deposits that haven't come through. And you should, it's like I said, it's on the list of reports somewhere down here.
Oh, Angela Kester had a really good.
Renee, this
Um,
is Tina. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And she asked that as president-elect, can they be involved with the monthly reconciliation? And the answer to that is yes. You should be shadowing your president, and that's how you learn, is by watching them work with their treasurer. Then you know how to work with your treasurer.
So if you go under For My Accountant, you will see the reconciliation reports, and you'll be able to pull them to put them in your books. And there again, when you look at them, it's going to show you, like I said, if anything's outstanding, if they had outstanding checks or let's see, this one, that was a little account. So let's get to their big account. Which is your big account? 85,
6580,
right?
Yeah.
So when we did it in February, I haven't balanced that as of yet. So if I want to review the report, it will tell us here that if there's any, these checks cleared, and then it will tell us if any checks hadn't cleared, which I don't think we had that many. Uncleared checks, we had 2 that hit in February that weren't cleared for whatever reason. So that's what you just want to be aware of when you're looking at that. And was there another question?
Tina.
Tina?
you were gonna-
No, I'm good. I was just going to say you can also get to these reports through the reconcile screen. So there's a, so if you click reconcile on the right-hand side,
Here?
then the history by account is right there.
And that would be another way, right, to get them. And usually there are like 2 or 3 ways to get to the same report. It's just, you know, what you've done and what you're accustomed to and what you want to do. So, okay, any questions so far? No questions, okay.
Clear as mud.
Clear as mud.
Okay. So we went over on how to put your budget in. We went over on how to reconcile. We talked about your audit book and what's required. So what I'm going to go briefly, a few things that I just kind of wanted to touch on. Again, based on the responses that I got. Renee, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So if
Okay.
you stop sharing.
Haha, there we are.
Okay. Okay, can everybody see my screen? Everybody can see it? Can you all see this?
Yeah, but make it, can you make it a little bigger?
I don't know what happened. Well, it was big. And there we go. Can you see it now? Is that better? Okay.
Yes.
So this is the financial policy. Again, several of you, a few questions were asked earlier about if someone didn't use their money and who could use it and what have you. This should have been done and approved by your board and uploaded into your drive. We said by like middle of March. Some of you still have not done it. Some of you have said, well, you're having trouble getting people together to approve your financial policy. Again, should not be your current board. It should be past president, members. You can have a partner. If you don't have anybody locally, maybe you reach out to someone else that can help you out from another network that's local, but you don't want the current board to do your financial policy. Again, it's the members' money. So a few things on here. They worked last year endlessly to get this done and to have one generic policy for everybody. When I was president back in 2019, everybody had their own policies, what they use debit cards for, how much they did per diem. Everybody was willy-nilly. Some people used it for, they would pay up to $150 a day. Some people would pay mileage for individual people. So I'm just going to give you a word of personal advice and opinion. If there's not at least 2 people driving in a car, they shouldn't get paid mileage. That's my personal opinion, because again, there's no reason why you should pay for 5 people to drive to Orlando if you live 3 hours away. Think about the money that it's costing the network for 5 people to drive to Orlando and you're 3 hours away. Our local network is, if you don't have 2 people driving, you don't get paid reimbursed mileage. That's all there is to it. So something to keep in mind, but again, it's up to your individual network to do this. So if you go to page, I want to say it's page 3, it talks about, if you haven't seen this yet, as president-elect, maybe first vice president, treasurer should have all seen this, and president should have all seen this. Sit down at your next meeting and discuss this if you haven't, because this is important that this is done. Talks about record and retentions. It talks about what should be retained permanently. Talks about passwords and login, that they should be changed yearly. They should be changed. If you have a treasurer that leaves, they should be changed immediately. If you have a president that leaves, they should be changed immediately. Talks about how you reimburse things. And then it talks about member travel policy. And it talks about who the governing board is. If you look at number 2, it says reimbursement will be made to the network's president-elect, then reimbursements will be made to the following. And you check off who you want to reimburse. If you have the money to reimburse your first vice president, who's going to move up the line, your treasurer, your events director, you want to give money to a traveling state officer, committee chairs. I'll give you an example. Back when I was president-elect, I couldn't go to DC because my stepdaughter was getting married in Italy. So it was a choice of DC or Italy. Well, you know which way I went.
Italy.
And so one of our past DVPs, many of you, or governors, Linda Arvanitis, many of you know her, was on a committee. She was a committee member for national, and she was going to DC. We didn't have this, so we did a vote at the board to allow her to use some of my travel money to go to DC because she was representing the state and national. This is, you don't need that. This you have. You can go ahead, again, except for the exception we talked about earlier, where someone's going to use somebody else's money. But if you decide that if someone's a state or a national committee member, that you would allow them to have travel up to X amount of dollars, you can put that on here. You'll reimburse them. 30 days, black and white, unless someone's in a hospital or there's a major exception, that is the exception. With the approval, pre-approval by the governing board, the PMN class. This is really important. We talk about this a lot at the state level. How much do they need to attend of the meetings to get reimbursed? Again, my personal opinion, it should be 75 to 80%, if not more than that, that they need to be at the meetings. We have members that will come to the meetings and are involved a lot with Florida Realtors, with NAR, and they come to one women's council meeting and then they want to get reimbursed for everything with women's council. Again, my personal opinion, every network's different. If you're an officer or a governing board member, you need to be, number one, at the governing board meeting for Florida. That is the most important thing. National, you need to be, this year you have to be for president because you're going to vote. But you need to be at the governing board meeting for Florida, because that is when we vote. That is when you get to see the executive line in action, get to ask questions, you get to see how your governing board should be run. There's so much information there, but you decide as the financial policy task force decides, or committee, how much of the percentage that you're going to attend of that they need to attend to get reimbursed. Again, they should be there at least 3/4 of the time, if not more than that. So, and just you go through each one. We did this, Natalie was on that committee last year. Maybe Natalie can explain just a little bit more as to why they came up with this. But another real quick before I let Natalie speak, per diem. That doesn't mean if they don't spend their whole $50 that they get that money. Again, I've had that in networks. Well, I didn't spend the whole money. I brought my own food. So no, that's not what that is. That's with receipts to get reimbursed. So if you decide $75, which I know sounds like a lot of money, but when you go to DC, you're lucky if that covers a meal and a half. And when we go to California with all the extra taxes, you're lucky if that's going to include a meal, and that's eating at a cheap restaurant. So again, but that doesn't mean that, well, they need to eat fancy, we're going to give them $150. It's the members' money. And on the consent to serve that I know Beata's sending out, it even states on there, and it even states on ours at the state level, are you able to financially support if you don't have enough in your travel budget? At the state level, the presidents and presidents-elect at the local level get more money than Natalie and I do, and we know that. So we budget accordingly, that we know we're going to have to pay money out of pocket. We share rooms. We don't necessarily share meals. But anyway, go ahead, Natalie, real quick. Do you want to just maybe quickly as to why this came about and you know?
So we noticed this was the brainchild of the 2020 state presidency report. After hearing year after year of problems, especially towards the end of the year, where the treasurer, they were either over budget and people were asking for reimbursement, demanding reimbursements for items that just didn't make sense. We have had things, everything from a limo ride reimbursement request to somebody purchased a gun on a credit card, on a council credit card. So we created this document not as a cemented document that you had to follow it word for word. We know all of your networks are different. We do not expect Miami-Dade to operate the same way as Flagler. Everybody has different allowances. So what we wanted you to do was read through this. You'll have some aha moments of, we never thought about reimbursing for that. Or, oh, this clarifies, this gives the treasurer that baseball bat that you need when you have to tell somebody, no, you're not writing them a reimbursement check because it doesn't follow these guidelines. What you do is the team that goes through this, they will delete anything that isn't appropriate to your network. They will modify it to fit your network, but it needs to be reviewed annually so that any changes that need to be made, the template will always be available to you on the state Google Drive, so you can refer back to it if you ever need to. But you'll notice towards the bottom, it talks about the guidelines for donations to charities. It talks about the use of credit cards. Some of those are very hard in stone. We do not write checks to charities. We're not allowed to, because we are a 501c6 and all of our members' money must go towards the use of our members, which means we can't write checks to to outside organizations other than RPAC. That is one that is allowable, but that is not a 501c3. We are not for profit. We are not tax exempt. There is a difference. It takes a lot of research to read exactly what a 501c6 is, but we are basically like a chamber of commerce or your local realtor board. They realized a need for these organizations not to have to pay taxes. However, we are not a non-profit. There's a difference with that. But like I said, you have a lot of leeway. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time talking about it, but you have a lot of leeway in adjusting this to fit your local network's needs. If you need assistance working on it, reach out. Renee's got a lot of experience with travel, with reimbursements and what's right, what's wrong. Obviously, Denise is picking up a lot of experience this year. Trial by fire, right? And I have as well. So we're all here to help you with this document. But it's mainly to give you the documentation you need as treasurers so that you can do your job without having a lot of dissension within, because you just go back to this. But the big thing I want to point out doesn't mean that you can't make exceptions. Like Denise talked about, if all of a sudden you've got this travel policy that says that your general members don't get reimbursed for travel, but you find out half of your governing board line can't go and you have somebody serving, you can still go back to your governing board, make a motion and make that change so that they can be reimbursed.
Absolutely. Thank you, Natalie. And I will resend this out to everyone. You should have it, but I'll resend it again. And you should have it filled out for your network, and it should be updated, uploaded into your Google Drive. And I would say print a copy up and keep in your audit book as well. So as you're going through, you can go back and look at it. So on page 6, it talks about check signing. I know one of the networks, because the treasurer did not live close to the network, was concerned, do we have to have 2 people sign the checks? The answer is yes. However, you can set up bill pay. For example, we have Chase right now. We pay through bill pay through Chase. So when I get a reimbursement from Natalie or Renee or Beata or someone else, I just set it up and I send them a check directly from Chase. So guess what? Nobody has to sign it. Doesn't cost anything. Easy peasy. I've got plenty of documentation. Look into that. If you're using whatever account bank you're using, if you can do bill pay to reimburse, and then you'd have a tab in your, if you look in our audit book, it says electronic bill pay. President Charmaine is okay with that, doing it that way. So if you're having a difficult time having 2 signatures on checks, that is another option. Again, you can always call myself, Renee, we can talk you through it and set you up on it. But you do need to have, and again, you check on this page that I'm on right now, who is actually going to sign the checks. Check will be given to the following individuals. Check all that apply. Lydia, you had a question?
I do. So for the electronic bill pay, for example, our storage facility automatically electronically deducts the money from our checking account. Do I need to show a receipt for that?
You need to
Yes.
print, you should get an invoice every month, so that prints it. So we have, I'll show you real quick.
While you're looking, Denise, at any time you have anything that's reoccurring, like constant contact, if you have Zoom, I think St. Lucie has a Zoom payment. So you should go online to each one of those and print out the invoice for that month.
Like here's the
put it in
one,
your
for-
book.
yeah, for Google, whatever, comes out every
Yeah.
month. And it's in, so again, if you're matching item for item on your bank statement, that shows up every month, and it's easy to reconcile because we know what it is every month. But you are checking it off item by item. So everything that is on your bank statement, you need to have a hard copy in this book. If you're truly doing the audit correctly, it should match item.
It's okay, Lydia.
You're fine.
And this is
All
why we're
good.
doing this. I know this is a lot of information, and we can even next month do it again and follow up on any questions from this, because I know it's a lot of information, and the beginning of the year, everybody's overwhelmed, but we want to get you guys so the rest of the year runs smooth, especially if you're going to do it again next year. And if you're not, that you can get that new treasurer in and get them to run smoothly. Because it's overwhelming and it's a lot of information. I think someone else, okay. Jennifer had a question that said, what kind of documentation? And Natalie had put the invoice they send you, you should be able to print out. Jennifer, were you referring to documentation for bill pay, or what were you referring to?
Yes, for bill pay.
Okay.
So bill pay, you're gonna have a check request or an invoice for somebody before you send it.
Yeah,
So
correct.
you'll either
Yeah.
have, like, if they have a travel request and you want to reimburse them on a travel request, you'll have the travel request plus their documentation, so you can submit that check. Then when it hits your account or comes out of your account, I don't know if it can send you a
Yeah,
picture of the
so
check.
Let me show you. So example, this is what was printed. So this was a reimbursement to Andrea Anacito for stuff that she bought for for installation. So I have all her receipts. I have her check request. And then I have what's printed from Chase that says when, and I usually write something on here or highlight it as well. Because you can type in what it went to. And sometimes I'll highlight it or I'll write exactly what it was. And then I have it stapled all together. So when my audit comes, they can look at bam, bam, bam. It's right there. No questions.
Okay, because I know when I was audited for last year's books, they were questioning, well, where's two people's signatures on this and where's two people? So two people are not signing.
You're not signing anything because you're what you have from the bank, all you have is this sheet right here that you're printing. You don't even have a check.
Well, which listen, I'm way cool with that. I just know last year's books were picked apart because they were like, well, two people didn't sign the request form. Then you know what I'm saying? And I thought just two people signing the check was enough, but they wanted.
You're talking about the check request form?
Yes.
On some of the forms it has on there for the president to approve the check request before it goes out. Is that what you're talking about, Jennifer?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, because that was something that they dinged me on for last year.
Can I address that real quick?
Yes, go ahead, Natalie. Thank you.
That's why you have a budget. The budget gives the treasurer the right to spend the money.
That's what I thought, but I was told that even to write the checks out to the country club every month that we attend, that I need to have the president authorizing me to write that check every single month, that every month the president needs to be signing the receipt that I was authorized to do that.
So that's why you have a budget for each event, because the event budget tells you that you can spend, that you can write a check for that money.
Okay, that's exactly what I thought, but the person that was auditing.
I didn't tell you that, did I?
No.
Okay, so the other thing,
Renee,
you have to remember though, with you guys, last year, if I'm not mistaken, you were over budget on every meeting, and maybe that was why. Because it wasn't budgeted correctly last year, and on every meeting you were spending more than you were supposed to. So maybe that might have been why.
Well, and it is historically, a majority of our networks have done the two signature handwritten check policy. However, we are moving into the future. There are ways that didn't exist even 5 years ago to pay vendors. And so we have to move with the times a little bit. And that's why you want to have a financial team in place to review these types of documents and to have them in place, because then you can go to this and go, this is why I did what I did.
Absolutely.
Because it was in the financial policy.
Yep, you got documentation showing that, so.
Yeah.
Sherry, you have your hand raised?
Yes, I'm still having issues with Bill Highway. I know it's not part of this financial policy thing. I set up the online bill payments to transfer the money from our Bill Highway to our checking accounts. And am I understanding it right? The president has to approve it so that it gets sent?
Correct. So is it going to the current president, number one?
Well, no, it didn't. So I went back to Bill Highway and they sent her something and she said it was an activation, or no, what did she say? It was some sort of code and she gave me the code. I said, there's nowhere for me to put in a code. You have to have an account. Am I correct? She needs to have an account with Bill Highway.
Correct. So Natalie, do you want to, because I know you did a lot with this last year, getting a lot of people set up on it, real quick.
So yes, the process, and how there is a report that you can run in Bill Highway. If you go off into the report section and you
Okay.
send transactions, it will show you a screen and you're gonna have to scroll all the way over to the left to see whether or not your transaction has been approved. Your president and your president-elect should be getting an email anytime you request to send money to your local bank account. Either one of them can approve it. And
Okay.
so what I recommend is when you put in the transfer request, you immediately text both of them,
Okay.
because then they can just log into Bill Highway. They don't have to click on a link. They just log into Bill Highway and on their main screen, it will say pending approval. And they can click on it and approve it.
Well, it sounds like both the president and president-elect do not have a Bill Highway account set up.
So they would have gotten an email from Bill Highway. Honestly, your president should have gotten it a year ago. Your president-elect should have gotten it, once they were reported to national in the fall.
Okay.
In November, they would have gotten it. If they still do not have an access to it, Jesse Forrestal is the contact at Bill Highway. I don't know his email off the top of my head anymore, but I bet Denise can.
Yeah, I'm gonna type his email in the chat box because I know several of y'all have reached out to me and Jesse has been real good about responding at Bill Highway. So please reach out to him and let him know, and he will go ahead and send them the activation code again to get their account set up, because they do need to have an account.
Okay.
I
so I'm-
know it's a bone of contention because as I was treasurer, I was extremely frustrated that I would put in this send money request. And on my side, it looked like there was no money in Bill Highway. Yet the money wasn't being transferred because it hadn't been approved by either the president or president-elect. And I did complain to Bill Highway about it. I said it needs to show on my side that there's still pending approval. But the only way to find that out from the treasurer's perspective is to go into that report settings, unfortunately.
Okay.
And that was
Okay.
something I was gonna bring up, was about Bill Highway. Many of you still have money, a lot of money in there. So please, 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 you haven't gone in, go today if you get a chance. Tomorrow, you should be checking it weekly, because even though everybody that didn't rejoin by the end of March was taken off of your ledger, your roster, you've got people joining now. So please, that's your money. Get it out of there. I mean, there's networks that have $800, $1,000, $1,200 in there. So please, please, please go in if you haven't gone in there recently and get your money transferred. So your president-elect will get the activation. Because that was something else I was going to bring up. So thank you, Sherry. That was going to be my next topic, because I know we're really running very, very late. Does anybody have any questions about Bill Highway? Anybody else on the call that's having issues with it, or? No, okay. Two quick things and then we're going to be done, because I appreciate y'all's time and I know we're running a few minutes late. And this is, hopefully y'all have got something out of this. I know it's a lot of information and it is going to be recorded, and we will put it on the cloud, or somebody will show me how to do that. We'll get it up there. So two other things. Obviously your Sun-Biz filing, I believe everybody has filed. If you haven't, that needed to be done. Please reach out to your first vice president, who I believe is the one who files that. Tax returns. Your tax return is due, and Renee just put her phone number in there as well in the chat. You can write it down and give her a call if you have any questions. Tax returns are due by May 15th. You fill out a 990 e-postcard. 3 questions are on the postcard. And if you had less than $50,000 in, I don't have my notes in front of me, in
Gross income.
gross income, which I believe pretty much everybody should qualify for the 990E postcard. So just fill it out, send it in. It literally will take you 5 minutes. You don't need to pay an accountant to do it. If you have somebody like, we have a local person that does it every year for like $35. But truly at the local level, unless your books are totally, and I know there's a few networks that have had some issues in the past that they're finally getting back on track. There's no reason to pay an accountant to do your books. There's no reason why you can't do your books with the help of myself and Renee, or somebody, you know, that you have, maybe you have a friend who is more familiar with QuickBooks that can kind of give you some answers to questions, but you don't need to pay an accountant. We have some networks paying thousands of dollars a year, and there's no reason for that. And I know we even have some accountants online that will probably tell you that it's not, it's something you all can do at the local level. So again, it's the members' money. Think about how we're spending it.
I have a question.
Yes.
Hi, this is Sasha.
Hi, Sasha.
Where do I get the postcard?
So I sent actually on the last email to the treasurers, and I will include it when I resend this email. I sent a link that went right to the IRS. Every month I send out to the treasurers my notes from the meetings, and I had a link on that, and I'll resend that when I send out the financial policy to everybody.
Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You will need to have your tax ID number.
Yep.
When you click on the link that she sends you, because it will ask for that in order to file that. It's an online postcard.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions before we finish the meeting? Did y'all get something out of it? Someone asked how we retrieved the recording from the cloud. Natalie, help me with that.
We will most likely be uploading it to our YouTube channel. Did you know we had a YouTube channel?
Can we put that in the chat?
Yeah, I don't have the link right now, but we will be putting the Condo Mania session up on the as well as this session, and the member of the box that was done last month is already up there. So we are putting our training sessions up on there, but Denise will send you a link once it's up there.
Yep, I sure will. Thank you. Thank you. Does anybody have any other questions at all that we can answer that while we're on the call? No? Okay. Well, we appreciate your time today. Hopefully you all got something out of this. Please reach out to myself, reach out to Renee, Natalie. We're here to help you. You know, even treasurer, president-elect, president, please reach out to us. We want you guys to be successful. We want y'all to get through the year, and then president-elects, this is what you're looking forward to next year. So you really need to get those treasurers up and running. This is why we're doing the elections early, so we can have those people in place and they can be here for the training that we have in August at the convention. So, all right, well, we thank you all for coming, and we look forward to seeing you in May at NAR. And if we don't see it at NAR, we'll see you on the next call.
Bye,
Thank you,
guys.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Stop recording.